Disruption is coming to the payment space, and that means trouble for companies like Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and Discover. Today's news is that Stripe is acquiring a wallet company, another cryptocurrency acquisition or blockchain acquisition. This is the disruption that I think is going to pull apart all of the massive fees that are involved in credit card transactions. It's going to take those fees from 3% to potentially 1% or less long term. That's going to be good for consumers. It's going to be good for merchants, but it's going to be terrible for credit card stocks. I'm going to explain exactly what they're acquiring and where I'm putting my money based on these blockchain innovations. My name is Travis Hoyam. Thanks for watching Asymmetric Investing. Please subscribe here on YouTube for all my content. And thanks to this video sponsor, The Motley Fool. If you go to fool.com/ASYM, they'll give you their top 10 stocks to buy right now. Let's start with what was announced. That is Privy being acquired by Stripe. This is actually from Privy's account. They said today that they're being acquired. And this is because this is a company that was built for developers. I'll go through their Bridge acquisition also in just a second. That was a $1.1 billion acquisition, I believe closed earlier this year. But that was to get Stripe into the stablecoin business. And the idea here is that you can move stablecoins on the blockchain much more efficiently than you can move money through credit card transactions. I'll get to those fees as well, but those fees are extremely high. And Stripe is actually charging about half the fee to move stablecoins as they do to charge with credit cards. So there's a lot of innovation that's happening here. It could be really good for merchants and consumers. But 3 years ago, they started the company to develop better products on crypto rails. I think that has probably been successful now folding into Stripe. Privy's big thing is wallet infrastructure. And if you're not familiar with the blockchain, what you want to do is you want to have a way to move money from point A to point B, but who actually has custody of that money. So in a traditional financial transaction, you're going to have two banks involved, and then Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover, they're going to be the credit card rails, but it's actually the banks that are issuing the credit card and accepting transactions. And people don't just have money sitting in a credit card account. That's sort of the whole point of a credit card in the first place. Somebody is basically lending you money. But with a wallet, with a crypto wallet, you could actually have custody in an app in your own crypto wallet. And that custody could be something that you actually own. So you may have $100 in this case in an app on a certain application that you use. Maybe it is the Stripe application. So instead of getting paid and that money sitting in your Stripe account, it sits in a Stripe crypto wallet. That's what they're trying to do to basically make this wallets as a service. That's something that Coinbase actually coined, but they're secure, modular, and scale as you grow. Basically, these are just infrastructure pieces, and these could be wallets that are operating on any different blockchain. That's really what this is talking about here. This follows Stripe acquiring Bridge. That's the other company that I talked about. This is a stablecoin company, and the idea was to get from one blockchain or even fiat currencies to another. So how do you do that? How do you do that really easily? They built the APIs that could do that. That was why Stripe acquired that company. So this is just another piece to move into the blockchain and cryptocurrency for Stripe. So why is this potentially so disruptive? I'm going to use Toast as an example. Toast puts a nice graphic out here. If you have a check size from Toast for $100, you say you go to a restaurant, you spend $100, the merchant, the person that you're actually paying, doesn't get $100 if you use a credit card. They actually get $97.31 in this case. Some of these fees are actually kind of negotiable depending on the size of your restaurant, but this is their example that they're using. So they say 77 cents is reinvested in Toast. That basically means that that's Toast's revenue from this transaction. But $1.92 is interchange and network fees. These interchange fees vary depending on what the transaction is, but Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and Discover are going to make most of their money on these interchange fees. And then actually banks are the other major beneficiary from these interchange fees. They're actually going to generate more revenue from each of these transactions than the credit card company is. But the credit card company is going to be a much higher margin because they're not taking out of the risk. They're not giving the benefits that you get if you have like a 1% or 2% back credit card. That money is coming from the bank, not from Visa itself, for example. But what you see here is that these fees are almost 3%. Depending on the credit card, you're going to pay 2.5% to 3% fee. And that's something that comes right out of the revenue for a restaurant or for any sort of merchant that you're going to. So if you're a restaurant and your profit margin, your net profit margin is 2 or 3%, that means that these credit card fees are going to make about as much money. You're going to spend about as much money there as you're going to make in a profit at your restaurant. So that just hopefully puts that into a little bit of context why this is so important for merchants, because two things are going to happen if we're going to move to crypto rails, to the blockchain, and to using things like stablecoins and crypto wallets. You're going to need to have users who can actually adopt these things, and then merchants who accept them. That's really where Stripe comes in. Thanks to our friends at The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/ASYM for the top 10 stocks to buy right now. And this is Stripe's documentation on their stablecoin payment page. This is the big piece. They don't really advertise this very much because they do want to be partners with their credit card companies. But if you charge with Ethereum, Solana, or Polygon, you're going to get charged a 1.5% transaction fee if the transaction fee on the blockchain is relatively low, like it is on something like Solana or the base blockchain. That means your fee could go from, in the example I used, 2.7% down to 1.5%. So if you're a merchant, instead of paying $2.70 for that transaction, you get to keep an extra $1.20. That is a really big deal if you're a relatively low margin business, like a lot of restaurants, like a lot of retailers. So this is really big news for a lot of companies that are building on top of Stripe. And this is one of the biggest payment platforms, one of the companies that's really going to lead the charge in moving to more digital transaction or digital native transactions on the blockchain. Now, this is going to be a long runway. This is not something that's going to happen overnight. But the thing that I think we're going to see first is more and more transactions are going to be done on the blockchain. More and more transactions are going to be done using stable coins. That's going to mean less growth for these credit card companies. And eventually, their growth is going to go negative, and there's really no easy way for them to respond because it is fundamentally faster, easier, and cheaper to make these transactions on the blockchain than it is through traditional credit cards. That's why I think this is going to be so disruptive for them. So how can you invest in this space? Because Stripe is not a public company today. There are really two ways right now. I actually own both of these stocks. Coinbase is going to be another infrastructure company. Obviously, they have the exchange. They also get a lot of revenue, almost over $1 billion over the past year, from the USDC stablecoin. So running that actual stablecoin, the company that actually runs the stablecoin is now public. That is Circle. Coinbase partners with Circle. They actually generate more revenue from the USDC stablecoin than Circle does, ironically, because of the arrangement they had. They actually started that token together, and Coinbase owns part of Circle. So those are really the two ways right now to play this big trend in public markets. A couple of other potential ideas would be companies like Robinhood and SoFi, who are leaning into the blockchain. All of these stocks are companies that I own because I think the blockchain is going to be such a disruptive piece in the assets that we own in the digital world and how we make transfers of money, like you see here with Stripe. So these are really big acquisitions, really big announcements, and I think this is going to start a ball rolling using many more stable coins and blockchain rails, something you may not even notice as a user, which is really the good thing here. But let me know what you think about this announcement. Leave your comments in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe to Asymmetric Investing. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.